Hello, and welcome to Radio Socialist Olympia, the podcast of the Olympia chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. I'm Isaac Wagnitz. For our longtime listeners, we do apologize for the long hiatus between programs. Corey and I have both started new jobs and entered new unions in the last few months, so that's taken some settling in, and so we haven't given the show the attention it deserves. But we're here today with Rachelle Martin, who is running for Tumwater City Council Position 5. Rachelle is a member of the Washington Federation of State Employees Local 443, incidentally, the same union that I am now in, and has been serving as president of the Thurston Lewis Mason Central Labor Council for the last little while. Since announcing her candidacy, Rachelle has been endorsed by Olympia DSA as well as WFC 443, the Thurston Lewis Mason Central Labor Council, UFCW 367, as well as Olympia Indivisible, and I think maybe some other unions and progressive organizations at this point. So already there is a broad base of labor and progressive support for her campaign. Listeners may also be aware that Olympia DSA also endorsed Robert Vanderpool and Caleb Geiger for Olympia City Council, as well as the Workers' Bill of Rights ballot initiative in Olympia. I wanted to focus on Rachelle's council race in Tumwater, however, for a couple of reasons for this episode. First, Tumwater and Lacey politics tend to get less attention in general than Olympia's. And second, progressive organizations in particular tend to make them less of a priority, or so it would seem. Nonetheless, a great number of working class people live and are employed in these cities, so it is incumbent upon us to pay due attention to affairs there. Rachelle mentioned to me, for instance, that a lot of low-income working folks are moving to Tumwater because of higher housing prices elsewhere in the region. This can mean challenges for local government, but also opportunities for our kind of politics. And with that, welcome Rachelle to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So first off, tell us a bit about yourself and your background. What led you to become so active in the labor movement, and what caused you eventually to decide to run for public office?
Sure. I've always been like a volunteer. I've always looked for opportunities to be of service to other people. So I've just always gravitated towards opportunities to help my community. And that's shown up in a lot of different ways. So specifically with labor, I grew up in a union household, but it was a very begrudging union household. My dad was a union carpenter after he was a pastor. And I was raised in a very isolated environment because I was raised in the faith, and my dad would go off once a month to the union hall, and it was a very far away kind of amazing place that you actually get to talk to other people instead of just like people that you go to church with and school with. And so I'd always had this idea that unions were something really appealing and very mysterious and cool, because my dad would come home and he would be very upset or excited, and it was just full of passion every time that he came home. And so when I started thinking about what kind of career that I wanted to have, you take that moment of what are the things that are most important to me, and I realized that security was the most important to me. So I wanted to have a job where I didn't have to worry about getting fired, that I knew what my wages were going to be, that I could have that sense of reliability within my employer so I could relax and actually do my job and live. So I knew that I wanted to work in a union environment, and I knew that I wanted to basically answer questions for a living. So I started working at Timberland Regional Library, which is the perfect place to work if you want to answer questions. And so I started working. I signed my card on the first day, but I didn't go to meetings because it seemed really overwhelming, and I didn't know how the system operated, and nobody told me what to expect. And I was like, well, I'm going to just assume that everybody's doing their job, and I'm going to be okay. And then through a series of events, I became a single mother, and I moved out to Pacific County, formerly living in Thurston County. And I was really struggling for connection. I was living in a town where I didn't know anybody. It was me and my then 2-year-old. And well, I really love library people, and how can I be with the people that I really like, but not at work? And I was like, oh, I could go to union meetings. And the other really amazing thing that they did was you would get a stipend when you went to meetings, and they would pay your mileage if you were coming from a distance. And so
Mm.
driving from Raymond into Olympia, I got $25, and then I also got my mileage, and I was driving this tiny car. And so the amount of, the check that they wrote far surpassed anything that I paid in gas. So I was able to get a little money in my pocket, and it really made me feel comfortable about going. And I got really excited about, oh, these are the things that unions can do. So started to go to more meetings, and then started to step into positions of leadership. I became a delegate to the Central Labor Council, and I got really excited about, okay, this is a system that does make sense when somebody explains it. And now I know what you can and can't do and how to be effective. And so I just started doing it more and more. And now I guess I've been a union activist. I mean, it's got to be close to 15 years at this point.
And then, so leading from that, yeah, what eventually made you like decide to run for city council?
Um, so municipal government and unions aren't really so different, especially when you're on the outside, because both of them seem extraordinarily confusing and also really easy to defer to other people that are in positions of power. So when I was thinking about, like, okay, I really enjoy union organizing. This makes sense to me. I really like this. But there's only so much you can do in this one specific space. And so one of the things that I try to communicate when we're organizing is you can't solve everything in one room. And so you need to be aware of the different kinds of problems and what different solutions look like, and the rooms where you can be a part of those solutions. And local government is a huge part of that. And so and the other thing that I really wholeheartedly believe is every office should be contested. There's no reason that we should defer to incumbents just because they want to run again. And so when I knew that there was going to be an open seat, and I was even considering running against an incumbent, just because that's how democracy is supposed to operate. And I wanted to show the people that I work with on a regular basis, like, running for office is something that should feel accessible to all of us. So I'm going to do it and just kind of jump in with both feet and see how it goes, because it's the right thing to do, is to be, engaged in your local community.
Yeah, and local government often has more power over people's day-to-day lives than they think it will. I mean, the state has like a big role in enforcing like workplace safety through L&I and stuff like that, and cities can set their minimum wage and other kind of workplace regulations in a way that hopefully things like the Workers' Bill of Rights are bringing more attention to that. But I think a lot of folks maybe don't know that local governments have that power.
I completely agree. People don't understand the impact that local government has on our day-to-day lives. And it's things that people don't think about, like zoning. And, it's really thinking about, the state government does a lot, and they, create a lot of structure, and the federal government, doubly so. But when we're talking about your actual day-to-day life, and I speak even as a person that their job goes through the federal government, through the CDC, local government has such a larger impact on my life than the federal government does, because it's also the implementation arm for a lot of policies. And so if progressive people can embed themselves in local government and become really active, there is a level of mitigation of harm that we're able to engage in, that I think is really important for all of us to be mindful of.
Absolutely. So going back to the labor thing for a minute, a lot of people, maybe most people who are like actively involved in the labor movement around here, would know about you through the Central Labor Council. But just for listeners who might be new to that sort of environment, can you just tell us a little bit about like what CLCs are and what they do?
Yeah, so there are 15 different CLCs throughout the state. CLC stands for Central Labor Council. So mine is the Thurston Lewis Mason Central Labor Council. And it's basically an umbrella organization of all of the area locals within that geographical space. So we are comprised of every AFL-CIO local that is within our jurisdiction. We meet collectively once a month and develop, what are our priorities, what's going on. And one of the things that's really important is understanding what's happening in other people's workspaces. It's really easy to get siloed when you're doing union work and you think retail is the only thing that matters, or construction or labor or public sector workers. And the CLC is one of the only spaces where we can do cross-industry organizing. So I really enjoy it because it's the only time that we really talk to every union member, or that's really what our goal is. And so we are also the conduit of, information that goes to the State Labor Council, and then the State Labor Council down to us. And then, so I kind of joke that we're the middle management of Washington state unions. And the other huge role that we're supposed to play is embedding ourselves into local politics and making sure that our elected officials know who we are, that we are really vocal about the importance of unions in our organization and in our community. And so we do a lot of political endorsements. We talk to a lot of elected officials and make sure that they're showing up for working people as often as they claim to be.
And what are some things that the Thurston Lewis Mason Central Labor Council has accomplished in recent years that you're particularly proud of?
I'm really proud of so many different things. So I am the first woman president of our labor council. And I'm also the first public sector worker. So it's just a huge achievement that I was even elected. And I'm a single mom. And so it's just kind of inconceivable to a lot of people that I would be the head of any kind of union organization. Then what's been really exciting, I've been on the labor council for a number of years and on the executive board for probably 8 years. But this is my first term as president. And one of the things that I'm really the most proud of is bringing in other people. When I started out on the labor council, there was maybe 10 people that would show up to regular meetings. And now we had a meeting yesterday and we had 40 people in the room. And these are 40 people all representing different area locals. So our network has just grown so much, and it's going really well in that way, where we're talking to more people, which is always what we're looking for. The other thing that I'm really proud of, and I don't think anybody else in the state does, is we hold a monthly community gathering called Solidarity Night, and we do it at the ILWU 47 Hall at the Port of Olympia. And it's where people can come if they have questions about unions. Sometimes people don't want to go to their local meeting for some reason, or they have a question and they don't really know how to get an answer to it, or they want to start a union in their own workplace. And now we have a consistent kind of place and time where people can come and find us. And through that consistency, we're able to connect with so many different organizations and people. So I'm really, really, really proud of the work that we've done in that space. We also do lots of community events. We've rented out the Capitol Theater a couple of times and we did Labor Wars of the Pacific Northwest. We showed Salt of the Earth. And then this next month, we're going to sponsor the OFS kids movies every Sunday and show A Bug's Life and create an environment where families with children or just people want to come and just come together and watch a movie that is about collectivism and what is it like to stand together against the boss. So those things are really exciting. The other thing that, I was a big part of is we do May Day celebrations now, and we didn't before. The old Labor Council was very conservative. There was a concern that if we did any kind of May Day event, people would be breaking windows and rioting. And I said, well, let's just try it. Let's try it and see how it goes. And because maybe it's not like that anymore. And so now we've done 3 May Days. The theme the first year was just, let's get this off the ground. And then the next year was tenant rights and rent control. The following year, which was last year, this year that we're in right now, was about immigration. And this last year we did, like I said, the Salt of the Earth movie, and we did a panel about immigrant rights and migrant rights within the labor movement and what's going on. And then we also, on the following Saturday, held a rally at the Capitol and at Sylvester Park. So and the common theme between all of those things are, what is it like to invite community in and grow the people that we're talking to. And then as an individual, the vast majority of the time that I spend with the CLC is doing something called internal organizing. So all of the things that I talked about before, those are external organizing. That's, how do you work outside of your sect and bring people in? Internal organizing is, okay, well, now you're here. How do we make this run better? Like I said, when I first started in the labor movement, I was so confused. I didn't know how anything operated. The meetings were bizarre, and I didn't really understand anything. And then I started to figure things out as I went, and realizing that that's such a normal experience for people. So I consider my role as the Labor Council president is I can be that source of education, and I can tell people, so this is what's happening in your local, like you're going to tell me what's going on, and I have some ideas for what a reasonable campaign would be, or these are good questions to ask, or if you're doing your contract, like these might be good things to ask for. And so just offering information to area locals that say, if you want to have a strong local, if you want to have a strong union, you could try these things out and let me know what works and what doesn't, and then we can go from there. But it is creating that other arm of support, because in unions, you're part of an affiliate. Like Isaac, you and I are in WFC, and so those are the people that negotiate our contracts. They do all of that really important business organizing. I often say the Labor Council does economic justice organizing. So I don't directly negotiate contracts, but I talk a lot about what is it like to have an economically just contract and community, and then how can we build a structure that is actually inhabiting those values that we have. So that is a lot of what I do, is that internal organizing of, hey, you think that your union should be doing this thing? This is how to make it happen. And I'm really, really, really proud of the work that we're doing. And that's growing exponentially, it feels like.
Yeah, the solidarity nights have really taken off. Like I've seen those get bigger and have people from more different unions at them, like all the time. Like ones that you used to like never see people from at anything. Now we've like started to see. And also those are first Wednesday, 6 p.m. They're a good way to meet like-minded folks if you're in a union or if you're just a worker and are thinking about organizing or whatever. And also, Rachelle brings Banh Mi, which is
I've heard it's the best banh mi in town. I didn't realize it was going to be so popular, but I'm that. And if I can say, one of the things that I'm really proud of is, so we go to the same shop all the time, and it's run by two sisters. We go to Beau and Baguette. That is by the Tumwater Fred Meyer, because I live in Tumwater. And they were so excited. They are so excited every time I go. And what was really exciting is that I went there a couple months ago, and they have a new, like, absolutely beautiful menu board. And it's digital, and they are so excited and realizing, like, I can't claim that we are funding the whole thing, but to say that the impact of us dropping hundreds of dollars every month hasn't had a positive effect on their business isn't true. And so it's really nice to see they're feeling more secure as, local small business owners. And it is really gratifying to see just that small amount of impact on this stop, and these two sisters who are just absolutely lovely to work with.
Oh, that's cool. The movie night thing just made me laugh a bit, because when you're talking about we sponsor for like the kids' night to watch A Bug's Life or whatever, and the schools are indoctrinating our kids with Marxism, and it's like, no, dude, it was like a Pixar movie from 1998, bro.
Right.
Yes, some stuff from my childhood, I go back and watch it, and I'm like, man, there was way more like social commentary in this than I thought there was. The 90s were weird. Anyway,
the 90s were weird.
So you've also been involved in some other efforts around here, like the labor campaign for single-payer healthcare in Washington State, as well as, of course, the campaign to get the Workers' Bill of Rights initiative passed in Olympia. What have those kind of entailed for you?
Sure. So one of the major things that union locals and CLCs can do is we do these things called resolutions. And they're basically, you identify some kind of problem, and then you write like a technical paper about it that says, I see this problem, and these are the reasons that it's a problem. And then at the end, you say, well, this is what I want to do about it. And so if you ever see those papers that say, whereas we live in an environment of oppressive healthcare insurance companies, and then you list all, and then it says, be it resolved, we are going to work towards passing single payer healthcare in the state. So that was the first step, is we passed a resolution. And then I started going around to other locals and CLCs saying, this is the thing that really does bind us together, is that we're all tied to the health insurance industry. And people can't really agree on much, except everybody hates their health insurance company. They're always, they're designed to make money off of our health, and that is immoral in so many ways. And unions are also very tied to their healthcare plans. There's a lot of affiliates that provide their own healthcare, and so this has been a very controversial topic to shift into single payer healthcare. So the first thing that we did was we passed a resolution. Then I started going around, hey, everybody, let's, because the more groups that sign off on it, the more powerful it is, obviously. So I started going around and figuring out, okay, who's, an ally, who has questions. And then we created educational opportunities, because what's the difference between single payer healthcare and Medicare for all, or universal healthcare? And, when you're trying to do something, you can't bully people into agreeing with you, but you can create opportunities for people to ask questions. And I'm very emphatic that I don't need to be around people that agree with me all the time. I really thrive on discussion and people saying, I have questions or I have concerns, or, going about conversations in that way. So we did educational opportunities. We met with people in the State Labor Council saying, is this feasible? Talking to legislators that were overwhelmingly unsupportive, and realizing, okay, they are really keen on keeping things the way that they are. We can't rely on these people. So what can we keep doing at the, ground level? So it all ended up culminating in the State Labor Convention. We have it every year, and there's always a slate of resolutions to get passed. And what those ultimately turn into are, these are going to be the priorities of the State Labor Council until, the problem goes away. So it was really exciting. We were able to pass it. And this was the culmination of a ton of effort from a lot of different people. And it was really exciting, because now we can go back to the legislature, and this talking point that they have of, well, we can't have single payer healthcare because unions are opposed to it, and say, well, that's not true. And you can either come up with a new excuse, or you can do the right thing and you can just pass what everybody knows is the right thing to do. That was single payer healthcare. That was about a year of my life of working with a lot of really amazing people to try to see what it's like to build a strategy to pass single payer healthcare in Washington State over the next 2 years. And then the Worker Bill of Rights, it was really similar. The people that wrote it was UFC W367. This is a local that I work with all the time. I adore them. And they have this amazing idea of raising the minimum wage and secure scheduling. And what was great about working with them was, because this was like their idea, their baby. I just said, tell me what we can do to be of service. What is it like? What kind of help do you need? And then let's do it. And so really taking their lead and making sure that things were going in a way that they felt really comfortable with. We were able to push out, and, every event we talked about it. We did signature gathering at everything that we did, and we made sure every local knew that this was happening. And it was just boots on the ground for a lot of it.
Yeah, longtime listeners of the program may remember that I interviewed Michael Hines, the president of UFCW 367, like a couple times, including about some of this stuff. And UFCW 367 is awesome. I used to be a member. But one of the things I've really always loved about them is they're like, okay, we need to we're going to tackle the like shop floor side, contract side stuff, but we're also going to tackle the, the stuff outside of the workplace that affects that. Like the way that he sort of, Hines expressed that to me was like, well, we can negotiate a great contract, but then, if the landlords can raise the rent 1,000% right immediately afterwards, we've gained nothing,
Right.
right, for our members. So we got
Right.
to like tackle that side. And I was like, yes. Um,
Yeah.
um,
Absolutely. And it is that like business organizing versus economic justice organizing. And UFCW 367 shows that an affiliate can do both, and they do it so well. I just have the utmost admiration for the work that they've done. They're great people too.
Speaking of the Workers' Bill of Rights, though, and also kind of what you were saying about um, the legislature making excuses about like why they can't pass single payer healthcare. So for folks who may haven't been following this super closely, the Workers' Bill of Rights initiative in Olympia got enough signatures to be on the ballot in November. And something I didn't actually realize until it happened really was that like when that happens, the law says that it can be like kicked to the city council to just decide to pass it at that point, or they can like punt it back to the voters for the November ballot. And so we put a lot of pressure on, including the Labor Council, to just get them to pass it. It failed by 3-4, so it's going to the ballot. But like one of the things that just annoyed me about that meeting, I'm just going to be salty for a minute, is just the level of condescension that there was from the opposing council members about like, well, people didn't really understand what they were signing. If they had more time to educate themselves, and I'm like, yeah, people need to think really hard about how much they need to be paid more and be able to have a like knowable schedule at work so they can plan their life. It was just incredible. But I do want to give credit where it is due to Jim Cooper and Clark Gilman and Robert Vanderpool for voting to just do what needed to be done, especially in light of the Olympia Council's sort of historically like weird fetish of consensus on everything, that they were willing to like have a split vote, and those guys were like willing to stand on the right side of things. So we do appreciate them for that.
I do. So I want to echo that I do really appreciate that. I did a 3-year term as a social justice and equity commissioner with the city of Olympia. And it was really interesting to be in that space and try to bring up economic justice issues and be continuously shut down. Where it was, nope, that's not what we're going to talk about. We're here to talk about social justice and equity. I'm like, we're talking about economic justice. What I can't fathom how you could separate social justice and economic justice, and to see how consistently they're like, nope, that's not what we're here for. Nope, we're not going to talk about it. I would try to bring up the Worker Bill of Rights and try to get us to sign off on it. And there was this incredible apprehension to even talk about wealth inequity. It was so incredibly aggravating. So yeah, the fact that the three of them were able to say, no, this is the right thing to do, was such a step away from the way that the city of Olympia typically operates. And I really appreciate them for that.
That sort of is like modern American liberalism in a nutshell, though, isn't it? It's like we're going to talk about social justice all day long, but the minute we come to the crunch of like actually materially improving people's conditions, like we're out.
Right.
No way that could backfire on you. Anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So on the note of that local politics stuff, let's talk about Tumwater. Like, what are some of the key characteristics of your city in terms of just like the population, major employers or industries, any like big notable demographic or business trends that are going on?
Sure. So Tumwater has a current population of about 25,000 people. It's set to grow to almost 30 by the next census cycle. So it's a growing community. There is no major industry, as far as I can tell when I do my research and I just drive around and look, beyond retail, right? We've got Walmart, we've got Costco, we've got Fred Meyer, we've got, those kinds of, like, we have ways that people can spend money on groceries, but there isn't a major employer beyond the state. But just because you work for the state doesn't mean you live in Tumwater or even work in Tumwater, right? Like, I live in Tumwater and I also work for the state. I never have to go into my office that I live like 10 minutes from. So since the brewery doesn't exist there, which is such an incredible tragedy, and there isn't a manufacturing hub, there isn't anything like that. So the city, they've had a couple of different priorities, but things aren't really coming together. In terms of demographics, it is a fairly young city. It's also the most affluent city statistically in Thurston County, which is kind of amazing because also the median income is only like $45,000. So I think when we're talking about wealth inequity, it's pretty stark when we are looking at development. So this is the second time I've lived in Tumwater. Right now I live in a subdivision that has an HOA and all of that stuff. And I see these, I mean, they've got to be $250,000 houses going up everywhere. And what is incredible is seeing the people that are moving into these houses are new immigrants. And so my neighborhood is really diverse in a way that I've never seen Tumwater be before. And so that's really exciting. And these people are really affluent because, these are the people that are buying the very expensive houses. The first time that I lived in Tumwater, I lived in Little Rock. And I lived in this little house that is across the street from Little Rock Elementary that used to be a gas station. And so you have this really interesting divide between suburban Tumwater and rural Tumwater. And it's very different on what the priorities are. And so it's a very sprawly community. It's very single household houses. There isn't a lot of apartments. There isn't any high density housing. There isn't mixed use. There isn't anything like that. And so it is a very suburban environment, but the further you go out to Little Rock, it is a little bit more rural. And so you have a lot of new building, and these people are building these massive houses. And they have these huge swaths of property. You also, when you're going around, you'll see a lot of empty land. There's a lot of lots that are undeveloped and just full of Scotch broom. And so there is a lot of potential for a lot of new things that makes me concerned because the city council does seem very centrist. And like you said, like very kind of liberal, but only like we don't like to do anything kind of liberal, where they would think, maybe it is a good idea to just put in warehouses. And, my ultimate fear would be, oh, we have all of this open land. What would be really great here? An AI data center. And then all of a sudden we can't drink the water and, all of that stuff. So Tumwater inhabits a very large amount of just square mileage. And it's a fairly disconnected community. So there's a lot of families. It's a fairly young community. Yeah, it's Lacey is very different because it's being built up so quickly and it's becoming so expensive. Tumwater isn't like that. It is growing, but it's not at the speed that Lacey is. So the amount of potential that this area has is vast. And it could be either developed in a very intentional and exciting and progressive way, or it could be, hey, we should have another Costco. We should have more fast food restaurants. We should have more, single family households that are these, McMansions. So I think right now is actually a really pivotal time for Tumwater because the growth is happening, but it hasn't really taken off in the way that it has in Lacey. The other thing that I was really shocked at is the operating budget of the city of Tumwater is there are 520 people that work for the city of Tumwater, and their operating budget is $330 million. And that is up from like 200 employees and like, I think it was like $70 million just a few years ago. So it's growing in a way that could be really scary if the people that were in charge were not very intentional with the choices that they're making.
Wow, yeah, that's like pretty drastic. So when you mentioned the rural versus urban aspect of Tumwater, this is tangential, but I had like a weird realization about Tumwater the other day. So like
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago, I did a thing with the union where like you take a few days off work and go like knock people's doors to try and get them to sign cards if they're not signed up yet or whatever. And me and my rep were like out in that area that's kind of like just like south of Tumwater, and it's weird because if you go like half a mile down the road from my office, you are suddenly like in the sticks. It's like I'm in McCleary.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's like super sudden, and it's like very strange.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was this one, it was just like an apartment complex in the middle of a random clearing in the woods with like nothing else around it. And that was like really surreal.
Yeah.
Like Bettina and I were both like, what is this place? um,
I know exactly the apartment complex you're talking about. Yeah,
yeah.
and it's like the really nice thing about Tumwater is that if you want to live rurally, but you don't really want to live rurally, like you want to live in the kind of rural that like, but you could get to a major grocery store in 15 minutes. Tumwater is ideal for you because you can just live in the middle of the woods. You can develop your own piece of land. Like my now ex-husband, he's from Tumwater and he grew up here. He lived here his whole life and his family lived in Little Rock. And they were very low income. Well, I don't know, maybe lower middle class, but they had acres and acres of land and they were able to cultivate it in a way that they really wanted to and that they were really excited about. And that's something that just isn't possible now. So it was really interesting to see that rural suburban divide, and now it's only getting more and more pronounced. And now the rural people, it isn't lower middle class. It isn't, people that have moderate incomes. These are the people that, well, I want to build my $1 million house and land is cheaper here. So you do see an influx of people with a lot of money that are doing these new builds. And so, where are people that are working class, that are lower middle class, that are low income? Is there a space for them in Tumwater anymore? Or are they going to be priced out, quicker than the market would? I mean, housing is such a complicated and horrible issue because this is something that it shouldn't be an issue, right? Like housing is a human right. People deserve a place to live. And yet the market is so built against people like me that, have a modest income. And yet I'm forced into a rental that is so incredibly expensive and there's nothing I can do about it. So it's a very interesting community in a lot of different ways. And yeah, seeing this rural and suburban divide, that's really cool that you got to see it. And that area that you were in, that's going to get built up more and more and more, right? Like that truck stop wasn't there a couple of years ago, and there's a huge lot next to it. And there was a rumor that it was going to be made into a casino, which seems really intense. So it's, yeah. Tumwater is kind of on the precipice of making a lot of changes that could really turn the community into something that is extremely unworker friendly.
So yeah, what is the overall landscape of politics in Tumwater in recent years? Like sort of what has been the makeup of the city council? Like how have they tended to handle things? You kind of mentioned before that it was sort of like very a lot of very sort of centrist stay the course attitude.
Yeah, that has been my experience, is that I don't see a voice of progress on the council. I think that there's a lot of like, oh, wouldn't that be great if someone did this thing? I'm like, you're the person that's supposed to do the thing. I don't know why you're not doing it. So I think there is just kind of like a go along to get along kind of vibe that happens. What is really unfortunate is the office that I'm running for, it's the only contested office in this election cycle. All of the incumbents, nobody ran against them. And that's just so supremely undemocratic, and also emboldens these people to just not do anything because there's no competition. They can have their offices as long as they want them. And so I don't know if it's laziness or complacency or they like the way that everything is going, but the most that I've seen is, there was a Capital Way improvement program or project that was pitched a few years ago. And so every so often you'll see something, but the intention is totally solid. Like, what would it be like if Capitol Boulevard, Capital Way, I'm not sure what it is, was walkable, and there were actually businesses that people wanted to visit, and it felt like a comfortable place to go instead of this kind of like bizarre concrete with power lines above your heads and all of that. So I appreciated that was at least pitched, and I will every so often see things. But the fact that we have overhead power lines is wild. Like that's so antiquated. And so it is a very conservative community. It's a very conservative community. And one of the things that has been really interesting is to see how the outcry of the girl that wanted to play basketball, and then
Yeah.
the totally unfortunate controversy that happened because she just wanted to play sports. It really lit this community up, and you got to really see how hateful these people are, and that's really my concern for specifically the Tumwater School Board, but the city in general are these people that are transphobic, that are so filled with hate, are they going to use this community to start finding each other and to get really outspoken and say, we want to make this into this little pocket where we hate openly and it's okay because we're all signing off on it. So, and then you see the other side of it, of people stepping up and saying, this is totally unacceptable. Kids should play sports, So Tumwater is really at this crossroads that is really scary and exciting. And I know is a huge reason why I wanted to run was I see how things could go so badly. And I want to be involved in making things as good as possible for as many people as possible.
Yeah, and in fairness, like the shitheads on the school board are all like being challenged by some much more progressive candidates, which is like encouraging to see.
Yes, very exciting, and I like the people that are running. It was really scary to see that they were running against, Moms for Liberty and those kinds of people. So this is a race to really look at because it's going to really dictate the landscape of Tumwater.
I mean, as gross as all that stuff is, though, in a way, I feel like it's, potentially a good opportunity to talk about, like, the only people who benefit from this kind of division are the people who are out to, like, exploit all of us. I mean, I don't want to go, like, too far off track here, but I think in the same way that, like, these people are having a meltdown about trans kids, it's kind of the same thing as, like, when these same people had a meltdown about like interracial marriage like a couple generations ago, where it's like, oh, if because I'm so invested in exploitation and hierarchy being natural, anybody who like blurs the boundaries of the categories of who I'm allowed to shit on, it just like makes me like completely, my whole worldview like starts to collapse. Right. And also like, yeah.
No, keep talking.
Well, no, and just like also, it's like, how do you have time to be this wound up about this? Like, get a job. Like if you had real problems, like you wouldn't be
right.
Yeah, no, and like it definitely comes from wealthier people.
Yes, no, that's absolutely true. Or people that have been told that this is something to fear, or anyone that isn't exactly like you. And so you do see a lot of people that are just living within that fear. And what I appreciate, especially coming from the background that I do, is I like it when people start saying the quiet parts out loud. And I'm like, you guys are telling on yourselves over and over and over again. And instead of just keeping all of this hate within your head, and maybe I would think that you are a good and decent person. Well, no, now you're saying all of the things that you were thinking. And now I know that no good will come of, you being a part of a decision-making body, because you're so full of hate that I need to do everything that I can to make sure that you can't control children playing sports. It's just such a ridiculous thing. And also, shouldn't be trivialized, the importance of it, because seeing not just these children being treated so poorly, but the absolute cowardice of the school board and their unwillingness to actually talk to the people that were upset that they were shutting down school board meetings, that they refused to engage. One of the things that I am the most passionate about, and the thing that I spend quite a bit of time doing, is I'm a state certified mediator. And so the right thing to do is, when we're in conflict, is to talk about it and to share our feelings and try to find that common ground, and how do we develop a path together that is suited to everybody. And so to see this decision-making body that is supposed to be advocating for children saying, not only are we going to openly hate these children, But also, if you are mad that we're doing that, you are our enemy and we're going to call the police on you. Like, it's just despicable.
Yeah, no argument here. So besides, I mean, that's like a huge issue that needs to be addressed. But aside from that, like, what do you see as some of the other like biggest issues that are facing working people in Tumwater right now? Like, obviously, like the rent is too high and wages are too low pretty much everywhere. But does that like play out in any sort of particular unique ways there? You kind of hinted at some of that already, but if there's anything to elaborate.
I think that there isn't a major employer. The state is not the resource that it has been in the past. You know, I think that there was quite a few decades where people, if they wanted to get a state job, they could. And that is not the reality anymore, especially within our current fiscal situation. And so to not have a major source of industry, you know, how are you going to keep people that are growing up in this community? How do you keep them, you know, in the community when there isn't a job for them? So I think that that's a major issue. It's very telling that one of the major controversies was about a tree. So there's a historic tree, and the mayor, who is now exiting, was like, well, yeah, we should just cut it down. And the community was like, this is a historic tree, we should save it and like try to make it safer if you're concerned. And so it was this bizarre unilateral decision that really lit the community up, because sometimes a tree is the thing that actually gets people to understand the power of local government. So there's a lot of that, but then there's like the specter of the brewery is, I am just shocked that nothing has happened with that we have this decaying building that it feels like the community is held hostage by. And to see that this used to be a place that was busy and employed people and gave them a good wage, and people were proud of the work. Like, I remember that's where I spent my 21st birthday. I was really excited because it was such a rite of passage for so many people. And then to see the way that it's fallen into disrepair because this out of town owner is just out to make a buck is just such an absolute tragedy. And it's a failing of the city council that we are in this situation. The cost of living is an enormous issue because so much of the industry that we have here is retail. You know, what are we going to do when people can't afford to buy food? And so these are very real situations that I think I have not seen the city council address them in any kind of way. So trying to figure out how are people going to live, I think that this is going to be the next crisis, is that things are going to get so dire that people won't be able to afford food and their bills. And now we can see, you know, private equity trying to buy up, you know, energy companies, and people can't afford. I mean, it's just, if proper progressive policies aren't enacted, the amount of harm that can fall to people will be just immense.
Yeah, I mean we might end up talking about that a little more later, but yeah, the brewery is a really great example of like, boy, you could actually do some cool stuff if you just used like public domain power to like redevelop this as something
Right.
useful. So I mean, any like on any of those other like pressing issues as the city council so far, like on wages or cost of living, have they basically just like not done anything? Or
No.
how would you handle those things like differently? I guess kind of contrast how the status quo has been versus like what you would like to do.
Sure. So I think that there should be extreme limitations on the ability of companies, specifically private equity, to buy up housing. That when the housing market is dominated by companies instead of the people that actually live in the homes, it's going to create a housing market that's inaccessible for most people. So that would be a big thing, would be, you know, paying attention to who's actually buying houses and then controlling the housing market in that way. The cost of living, you know, ultimately you got to be able to feed your family. And the city of Tumwater owns the local golf course. They operate it at a net zero, so they don't make any money. Every dollar that they put in, they get back. But golf is a monoculture in so many different ways, and it's damaging Environmentally, there's nothing. I could soapbox about how bad golf is for a long time. So one thing that I would really like to do is to change the golf course into a community garden that was operated by the people that live here, and that the food went to the people that help cultivate the gardens, and then also to area food banks. That would be such a better use of this city-owned property than creating a recreational environment for people that are so affluent that they can afford the luxury of going golfing. And I mean, just the environmental nightmare, like the amount of herbicides that are used, and it's right next to major water sources. And so that would be a very like tangible way to help people's everyday lives. Was we're giving people food that is healthy and homegrown.
So you've got one opponent in this race, Megan Sullivan. What is her background, and sort of what do you think her approach is to the pressing issues in the community, and like how that contrasts with your approach?
I don't know Megan. I've met her once, and she seemed very pleasant. What I have noticed is she, and I mean this, um, I mean this in a nice way. Like, she is from Tumwater. Like, she is born and bred. She is embedded in the community. Um, and to realize the incredible privilege that it is to be able to live and be happy in your hometown is huge. That is such a privilege. I have not been afforded that privilege. So she has a huge support system. She's affluent. She's extremely well connected. When we did have our conversation, she said she considered herself a liberal Democrat. So I think it is that, spirit of moderation. How do you go slow and steady? I think would be kind of her speed. Yeah, I think that's appropriate to say.
Well, she's from like the nonprofit world, right? Like, isn't that what her
Yeah.
sort of claim to fame is?
Yeah, and I mean that's fantastic, and I couldn't ask for a better opponent, right? Like, when I filed, it was really thinking about the Tumwater School Board. What is it like to run against Moms for Liberty? What if people file and they have that kind of ideology that they want to try to figure out how to make Tumwater an insulated community that is bred on fascism or Christian nationalism. So that was why I filed. Was I wanted to make sure, it is my value that like every office should be contested. And so I wanted to make sure that there was at least a progressive voice that was an option for people. But no, she runs a nonprofit that does a ton of good. I appreciate all of the work that she does. She has been on like the planning commission for the city. And so she knows everybody and definitely knows how the machine operates.
Yeah, I mean so I come from that world in a way myself. Like, I worked at nonprofits for several years, like after I got out of college, and I mean, and some of those organizations, I mean, they really do great work. Like, they're honestly oftentimes like the only ones providing certain kinds
Mm-hmm.
of services to people,
Mm-hmm.
and not wanting to minimize that, but at the same time, that's a world where like those organizations also really depend on like being cozy with like the local business community. Like,
Yeah.
they see, I think, the world in a way where if we just get sort of nice wealthy people to donate money to these causes, eventually we'll
Yes.
just like ameliorate these things. And
Right.
I think that somebody from that background would probably be less inclined to like make hard decisions that might make those kind of people unhappy, even if it was really like pressingly necessary to do so. You know what I mean? So I
I
would see that as kind of
Yes.
a liability in a way.
Well, and it's so like, to everything there are pros and cons, right? So it's um, one of the things that I really pride myself with the labor council is it's a volunteer position, and so I don't have to really watch my words, because if I offend somebody, then all of a sudden my paycheck isn't going to come in. I don't have to worry about that. I can say what I think. I can do what I think is right. I can live my life at the level of integrity that I want to, because I don't have to compromise, because they don't pay my bills, so I can kind of do what I want, and I don't have to. And my like day job is so separate from my activism work, and so that is a luxury and a privilege that I really I enjoy tremendously, because I don't have to. I don't have to find that middle ground. I don't have to make people happy. One of the things I think is good for all of us when we're figuring out who we want to vote for is, I mean, everybody writes a good thing for the voters pamphlet. Everybody says, nice things, but the thing that really tells you what a person stands for is who they're getting endorsed by. And she just got endorsed by like the Real Estate Association. This is an endorsement that I am not interested in. I'm not interested in going into that room and saying, I'm going to serve your interests, because I'm not. I don't want to serve the interests of the Real Estate Association. I don't. It's like I've got the Chamber of Commerce always puts on a candidate event. I'm like, y'all are not going to like me. And that's fine, because I know that it's the right thing to do, is to say that progressive politics belong in Tumwater. And if that makes you uncomfortable, that's fine. But that doesn't mean that I need to go away. So it's nice to be able to say what I think and not have to be overly guarded, because if I make somebody upset or I offend somebody, then all of a sudden a potential funding source goes away. I'm very happy that I do not have to have that level of concern.
Yeah, I was about to ask, like, what sorts of other like people or organizations are supporting her that you know of?
Oh, every member of the city council has endorsed her. They won't even speak to me. I've reached out and they won't return my calls. They won't speak to me. So it's prominent community members. It's it's those level of people that are really advocating for her to be elected, or the people that are interested in keeping things exactly the same.
Is it like, are there other sort of like business associations or whatever, like that kind of thing?
Yeah, I will be honest, I haven't looked at her whole like endorsement list, because it is like, I'm a first-time candidate. I've never done this before. I don't have a campaign manager, so it's one of those, like, I'm not sure of the opportunities that I'm missing out on. And I've got my lane, she's got hers. But she's extraordinarily business friendly. And some people will really like that. If you're interested in capitalism, and then, that's certainly a choice.
Yeah, I always that just reminds me of like how weird it is. I think the whole the such fierce opposition of like the small business, or some of them anyway, in like Olympia, to the like the workers' bill of rights. And it's like, bro, if people don't have disposable income, like what is your business gonna run on? I mean, if people can't buy stuff or whatever, it seems very short-sighted. But yeah, I suppose if you're just interested in keeping things the same way, that's sort of like the way you're gonna go, right?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing a lot of, like with the Bill of Rights and people that are embedded in like prominent community members, it's a lot of that pulling up the ladder behind them. Like, I'm okay and you can figure it out on your own, instead of, hey, there's a ladder. I went up this ladder and now I'm going to show you, this is the way to climb it, and I'm going to bring you up with me. I think that there is that, I got mine, you worry about yours, or my family has money, it's your fault that your family doesn't have money. So it is, it feels like a lot of that ladder pulling, not just within Tumwater, but just definitely in Olympia. You can see that a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that sort of drives home the point of like, but if you go to the people, I think like your message is going to resonate a lot more with them, like, than hers does, because like she'll, as I think you phrased it to me when we were talking once, was like, she's the person to vote for if you want everything to stay the same way in Tumwater. But if you're a regular person and you think things maybe aren't going so well, like maybe you'd like the cost of groceries to not take as huge of a gouge out of your paycheck or whatever.
Yeah.
then Rochelle's message is going to speak to you a little bit more, I suspect, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the hope, and so it is like she's outraised me. She's able to take
Fair.
in more money. She has the privilege of having a support system where I don't, and so she can go to tons of um, candidate events, and I'm not able to do that. It's really difficult. She is a single mom. I am too, but there's a difference between being a single mom with money and a support system versus a single mom with no support system that is struggling. I mean, that's a huge difference. And so the level of time that she's able to give to the campaign is different than what I'm able to. And it's tricky because it's when I was considering running, I was like, do I have enough time to do this? And I looked at the time commitment and I was like, I can totally do a meeting a week. That'll be fine. And then realize like the actual job, I'm like, this is doable. I can totally fit this into my life. And then realizing campaigning is 10 times that. I was like,
Oh yeah.
this is a lot. Yeah. So it's, yeah, she's running an incredibly strong campaign. And she's got a lot of money and a lot of support from the business community, in a way that I will never have that.
Well,
And that's okay. Those aren't my people, right? Like
yeah.
And I need to remember, like, all of those business owners, that's just one vote. And okay, it does. And, how many people are from out of town that, are really amplifying this message. And, if I focus on Tumwater and the actual people that live here instead of just the businesses that inhabit it, that might be owned by people that live out of town, then, maybe I'll be successful.
Well, I'm going to harp on this again, and like he's probably sick of me doing it. But I mean, last year when Sid Locke ran for LD22 with DSA's endorsement for state representative in LD22, I mean he got a third of the vote across the whole district as like a first time candidate with no name recognition. And in fairness, that was probably concentrated a little more in Olympia, but like LD22 encompasses Lacey and Tumwater also. And he was going out there as the like openly socialist, like pro raising the minimum wage, like pro Palestine like candidate. And he got a third of the vote like his first time out there, with way less money than his opponent had. So I think like I genuinely believe that there is like an appetite for this kind of politics. Like people are fed up with the status quo, economically and socially. And I think they just need to like hear from people who are speaking their language about that. I think his experience shows, with the right, kind of operation, like, these things are winnable for people like you.
Well, and that's, I want to believe that I know as a voter, I'm always looking for somebody that is saying what I'm thinking. And I've become so accustomed that that's never going to happen. And, if for nothing else, running a campaign and saying there is a possibility of progress, like true progress, happening in Tumwater, maybe that is enough to really light people up and say, I never thought that was possible in Tumwater. And if I can make things easier for the next people to run, or that candidates are held to a different standard because now there is that kind of breaking of the ice of saying, really the role of government is supposed to be helping people. And while they can masquerade saying, well, we're helping people by making sure that businesses are profitable, I'm like, that's not accurate, because if that was actually the reality, we would not be living in our current economic situation. And so, yeah, I'm trying to get accustomed to getting really loud about what progressive politics would actually look like if they were operationalized.
So with that, like, what are the few like key defining issues that you're really running your campaign on, and how do those relate to the everyday challenges of working class people in Tumwater?
Sure. So I believe housing is such a big deal. And so making sure that high density housing is an option for people and not just single family housing. So making sure that the zoning, really fun, sexy stuff like zoning, is important. And we really need to make sure that zoning is set up for people and not just industry. And so in the same vein, it would be, I want to make sure that there are regulations about what can be built here and not just importing massive warehouses and, just occupying that land and not doing anything productive with it. Other things would be, there isn't a major industry here. There isn't a major job center, and that is so unfortunate. And one of the things, so I worked for the library system for a number of years, and one of the things that's most important to me is children and families. And if you're not building a structure where families can thrive and people that grow up here can stay here, then really what are you doing except for building a retirement community? So the expansion of vocational schools and having educational opportunities, and I know this is more of a school board thing, but I think local government can really push this, the expansion of vocational schools and making sure that people, and not just children, making those available to adults, I think would be transformative for a lot of people, because when you look at the level of NEET adults that are, so NEET is never employed or in education or training. So these are people that don't do anything except just kind of exist. Like if you're not creating a pathway for those people and people that want to build a better future for themselves, if you're not creating opportunities for them to do that, then the amount of just community depression that falls is just immense. So I think that those are the major things. And then, again, really figuring out what to do with this shell of a brewery. I mean, that really is probably my key thing that I want to address, is that how completely unacceptable it is that we've allowed this decaying building just to sit on a hill and remind us of what Tumwater used to be. It's really frustrating thinking about, there used to be a restaurant that was next to the brewery and it burned down, and that rubble sat there for years. And I'm like, how is this okay? Like, it was bizarre when the South Pacific burned down that the rubble just sat there. And I'm like, the level of, pride that people should have in their community and that the, local government should have, how is this okay with people? So it's the other thing that is really important is how do you foster a sense of community within a town? Because you can inhabit the same geography and not feel like you're part of the community. And so enhancing the budget for like the parks and creating more opportunities for people to connect with each other. That's how communities really thrive. And, Tumwater does a couple things, but I'm not there. The major event is the big fireworks show on the 4th of July. And I hate fireworks. They are horrible, and and so to think that the major way that I can connect with my fellow community members is watching explosions, that's not how I want to connect with people. So creating opportunities for people to connect with each other is really important. And also creating a really transparent government where people feel comfortable that they know their council members, that they know what's going on, that they understand that public comment is not just available to them, but really welcome, and that it gets, taken seriously. These are the things that I want our government to feel accessible to everybody instead of just people that have the means to make enough donations to buy a candidate.
Yeah, so we've talked about kind of like the challenges that you're facing. I mean, you're up against an opponent with a lot of money and name recognition, but like what opportunities also do you see? I mean, like with these kind of policies you're talking about for really building working class power in Tumwater, building power for regular people to have an influence over their government.
I think it is, pushing out with that messaging that, really creating a sense of entitlement to people that say, like, this is your space. It's not, a business does not own this space. You, as a resident of this community, this is your space that you should be inhabiting and that you should understand what's going on. And so creating conduits for different commissions and really doing active recruiting and making sure that it's not just the same people on the same commissions and the same committees over and over again, that how do you create a structure? So like for me, like I mentioned when you were talking about, you asked me, how did I get involved in labor organizing? it was a $25 stipend and my mileage check. That's what got me going. And so doing the same kind of structure for committees and commissions within municipal government, like pay people to be on them. These are excellent training opportunities for people to understand how their government operates, or maybe they want to work on a skill set so they can get a different kind of job, or they just want to see a window into, how government operates. Like, pay people for the work that they do, and then you'll get a wider array, because when you don't pay people, you only have people that can afford to donate their time. And that's not the truth for the majority of people. So make it worth their while to engage in government, and also show them the impact that they can have on it. I think that's probably the most important thing, is messaging and telling people this is what I think is right. And then also it's that I'm not pulling up the ladder behind me. What is it like to, coach people up that and get as many people as possible up and be engaged in their government?
So how do you think your work doing labor and community organizing has prepared you to run for office and build a genuine connection with voters? I mean, this background is, of course, like one of the key differences between you and your opponent.
Yeah.
Like, how do you think you can really capitalize on that?
Sure. Well, so what's funny is realizing the differences, because I thought it was going to be a very clear line of organizing into becoming a candidate. And that hasn't been the truth, because organizing makes so much sense to me. And I can do it just like I'm breathing, because I am showing you a collective cause. Hey, we're all pointed in the same direction, and I'm going to show you how this operates. And so my messaging is about collectivism and, working together and all of that. And that's a very easy message for me. The difference between being a candidate is I did not realize how difficult it was going to be for me to say, I am a great person and you should vote for me, and talking about myself. I don't do that in organizing. I don't say, like, it's very, we do these things. And even though probably for a lot of things, I'm the one that does it, that's not how I phrase it. It's that we're all in this together, and, we're working together, instead of being a candidate where it's like, I am fundamental to this. That messaging is really difficult for me. I've gone through a fair amount in my life, and one of the things that I'm really proud of is that I don't lead or operate from a place of ego where I need a lot of recognition and say, I'm really wonderful and everybody should love me. Like, that's not how I operate. It's, I love working and I love doing the thing. And being a candidate is cocktail parties and like smoozing. And that's not how I operate. Like, my nightmare is a cocktail party. Like, it's just, I can't. So it's difficult because I'm not a traditional candidate, because it's just, I'm just not. And I think that's a good thing. And if I wasn't myself, I would like a candidate like me, where it wasn't like, it's clear that I'm different than, a traditional candidate. And like, isn't that good? Because having the same kind of people, that's how we've gotten where we are. And I know I don't like where we are. I don't think things are going really great. I think we could definitely do better. But man, if we keep electing the same people, then whose fault is this? So it's telling people that there truly are options, and then hoping that they like the options that you're offering them.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, I don't think like being a candidate has to just be like cocktail parties and schmoozing. I think that like professionalized, like consultant driven politics has like made it seem that way. But I think
Yeah.
that there's like a more genuine kind of politics where you can be like outspoken, but you're not just like, yeah, sort of a, what's the phrase? A weird kind of, you know, egotistical automaton or whatever, in the way that like sort of stereotypical
Right.
like these stereo sort of people's weird stereotype of like a political candidate is. But yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about, yeah, the difficulty of adjusting to the mindset of being a candidate versus an organizer. I mean,
Yeah.
none of it, like me and all the rest of the gang, are never gonna let you live the thing down where you gave the great speech at the Capitol and just like forgot to mention that you were running for office, and we were all just like, what?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that really is kind of the best indication of my priorities. Was I was focused on what is it like to build this community while I'm giving this speech to thousands of people, and how do I help them feel connected, and making sure that people feel appreciated and that there is a potential for us to join together as a community. And it just never crossed my mind to be like, oh yeah, and I'm the reason that you guys feel good, or that I'm the person you should vote for. Like, it's moving from a collective point of view into an individual point of view. I'm kind of not mad at how difficult that is, because I think working from a collective frame is how we do better work together. But it's difficult to convey that to people, that it isn't, you're not voting for a we, like it's my name that's on the ballot. And so it is, saying that I'm so great and you should vote for me is really hard. Seeing my name and face everywhere is really hard, because that's not, I think that's the other thing that I'm kind of known for is, there's not a lot of pictures of me. I don't look for photo opportunities. I'm very often the person that just works. And I guess that is such a big difference is I like to work. I like to do things. I like tasks instead of concepts. And that is different from a usual candidate where it is, I'm going to keep everything very big picture. Mine is, okay, well, I have the big picture. That's great. Well, how do you actually implement that? That's something that I'm really passionate about, but that's not an easy thing to translate to people. And so it is hard because by nature, I am quite shy. And so trying to be like, I'm the greatest is, it's not my, it's difficult. It's difficult. Being a candidate is, this has been such a growth opportunity, let's call it.
So what, I mean, besides just the necessary certain level of like self-promotion, like is there anything else you've really found to be like the most difficult or challenging aspect of campaigning? And on the flip side, like what have you found is like the most exciting or inspiring about it?
Sure. So a very traditional thing, and this is often how people get elected, is they go door knocking. And I don't do that. So I'm a survivor of domestic violence. And one of the things that would make our home life very difficult was when people would come to our door. And I am so painfully aware that you never know what's going on in somebody's house. And so the idea that I'm going to come to your house, knock on your door so I can tell you how great I am is just the complete and total opposite of the way that I want to interact with people. And this is how people get elected, is they knock on doors, they sell themselves, they build those connections. And that is something that is, I just can't do it. That's door knocking is just too hard. And so if I could probably point to anything, if I had a magic wand that I could get better at, it would be that. But yeah, on the flip side, the thing that's been really exciting is going out and talking to people and, planning events and then having people come in and then saying the things that have been in my head forever, like, hey, this is something and I've thought about this. And then hearing people say, you're saying the things that I wish that people have been saying. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that we're actually talking about this. I'm like, yeah. And we should be talking about these things more and more and more, because the more outspoken we are, and the more capable we are, then as like a progressive movement, then people feel more comfortable. Like, these things aren't pie in the sky. These aren't unattainable goals. These are things that we can do because now we're talking about them instead of, pretending that these were only things that we believed when we were in college and, talking at 2 a.m. Like, no, we can have a better community. We can have a better society. And to do that, we need to get louder. Leftists are private and so guarded. And I'm like, this is to everybody's detriment when we're shutting ourselves off and saying, this is going to be, if I don't say this perfectly, then people are going to get mad, because that can be such a problem in leftist politics. Like, I'm just going to put it out there. And if I say something wrong, I am very quick to admit my mistakes. I love it when people give me new pieces of information and it changes my perspective on things. I always really appreciate that. And so it's that has been the thing that's been really amazing, is hearing, I've been waiting for somebody to say these things, and I'm really glad that I got to hear you say it. Like, that's just like, oh my gosh, the best feeling ever.
Yeah, the door about the door knocking thing. I mean, yeah, it's tough because it like voter contact is what wins elections, but at the same
Yep,
time, like
absolutely.
it's one of like the rougher things, at least if you're like an introverted person. I mean, I've had people tell
Yeah,
me I should run for like city council here, and I've thought about it. Like a part of me thinks that I should, just given that we have some, well, less than ideal actors. But I've worked retail. I mean, I love my job now, but I mean, there's still, I can end up being like on the phones all day, like having difficult conversations, and the thought of then going out for like another 2 or 3 hours, and
yeah,
like just like I having the emotional awkwardness of that, I just feel like a plant withering in the sun, like when I think about it or whatever. And
yeah,
also it does eat like your
yeah.
whole
So it
life.
is.
Yeah, like I have things I never work
Well, that's
on.
it.
Yeah.
Hmm. So really thinking about, okay, running a campaign that doesn't have a campaign manager, that is really grassroots, that doesn't do door knocking. Well, gosh, what does that look like? So what do you do, and how do you get your message out there? And is it doing mailings? Is it doing, direct events that you advertise widely? Is it flyering? Is it, and so it's kind of figuring out. And this is a huge reason why I wanted to run, was I wanted to create, well, again, I guess I keep going back to the same thing, is what is that ladder for other people, and show, like, you don't have to do it this way. You can do it. And hey, I did it this way. And if I could go back and, do it again, I would have done this other thing. And it's, what is it like to create a cohort of progressive candidates, not just in Olympia, but all over Thurston County, and that we're there to support each other. I think that that's the thing that really gets me excited about running, that this should be normal. Every office should be contested. And also, in the same vein, like, the way that we define success can be so difficult, because it can be so linear for a lot of people. Like, if I ran a successful campaign, then that means I occupy that seat. Well, maybe a successful campaign for somebody else is, I made the opposition address issues that they never would have if I wasn't running. Or my success is that incumbent had to actually work for that office instead of just coasting. And so I think that's the other thing that really deters people from running is, am I going to get embarrassed if I don't win? And like, if we just take that shame out of it and say, well, the successes that you filed, the successes that you tried, the successes that you're propelling the message forward, instead of there's only one option to have success. I think that would just create such a warm and welcoming and supportive environment for people, if they knew that it's okay if you don't end up occupying the seat at the end of it. That it's good to raise a ruckus sometimes. Maybe that's what success is.
But we should be in it to win it, to like build power, right?
Oh, I'm not right. Like, if I won, and see, here's the thing. Like, I want to win 1,000%. I want to win. I know that I would do a ton of good. And also, I want to be able to hold my head up if, November 6th comes and I don't get elected. I don't want to feel like a failure.
Oh, and you won't. No, and about like the voter outreach thing. I mean, I've said it before. I think we should just fundraise so you can like pay a couple of people to canvass all the time. I mean, like
Yeah.
the all campaigns rely on volunteers to a large extent. It's very true, but I've worked on campaigns where it's like, yeah, they just always had a couple, like, for a few hours a week, and they were just paying them to go out, and they'd hit a few precincts like every week, and that was like how they really guaranteed the get out the vote. Granted, those were pretty like well funded campaigns. This was
Yeah.
back in 2016. I was still kind of a liberal working on like Democratic campaigns, but like they did that, and I think it was smart,
Yeah.
because otherwise, like volunteer, stuff comes up. People don't have predictable schedules. They can't reliably do
Right.
stuff all the time. But like that way, they always just like had boots on the ground, doing stuff.
Yeah.
So we should
Okay. Well, listeners,
fundraise
donate to
for
my
that.
campaign so I
Yes,
can
everyone
hire some
should.
door knockers.
Right, everyone should donate so she can do that. Yeah. So you've also was just changing the subject a bit. I've heard you mention a few times that you were like brought up in a church, in a religious sort of community, and and that has influenced the way you approach these kind of organizing and political conversations. Can you like talk a little more about that?
Sure. So, when I was little, and before I was born, my dad was a Pentecostal pastor. So I wasn't just raised like in a church. I was, being in a Pentecostal environment is very different. My mom was a devoted pastor's wife. She took that very seriously. And she was a homemaker. And so I was raised um, that I should be quiet. The role of being a little girl was be pretty, but not too pretty, be agreeable, be nice, be of service, but don't talk back. Like I have very visceral memories of being grabbed and being told that what I was saying was unwelcome. And so you learn how to be quiet so you can keep yourself safe in a lot of religious environments, which is unfortunate because really the beautiful thing about specifically being Pentecostal is this idea of what's the thing that really unites us. And churches, to say that I have mixed feelings about it is putting pretty mildly. Like I haven't. Churches and religion is very complicated, but the things that I took away from it that I really appreciate, that absolutely informs the way that I interact with people, is we're all connected to each other. We all have that invisible thread that we should take so seriously because it's that like an injury to one is an injury to all. Like I take that so seriously because we are connected. You can't deny that, or I can't deny that. The other thing is there's nothing worse than going to an unwelcoming church because going to church is kind of terrible when you're a kid. Like it's really boring and all of that. But when you go to one that in my mind does it really right, you walk in and you're welcome. They say, hey, we're excited that you're here. We're really happy to see you. Can I help you find a chair? Do you have any questions? Can I tell you what? And you get a program that says this is what we're going to be doing while we're together. And so to have that transparency of we're going to tell you how things operate, I completely bring that into my organizing work because when things aren't clear, people get scared and they shut down. So I'm very much a clarity is kindness kind of person where it's so important that people know how things operate, that they understand the rules that they're being adhered to. Specifically with that one, like there's nothing more unwelcome than a little girl in a church saying, can you tell me why we do this? I don't understand. That's just not welcome. And so I learned from a really young age that if somebody didn't tell me the rules, I couldn't ask what they are. And so I had to become incredibly observant about how people treated each other. So then I could understand what are these unwritten rules, and then I have to adhere to them because that's how I'm going to keep myself, physically and emotionally safe. And that's so unkind. And so you have to tell people just straight up, like, we have some rules and they're written down. Those are our constitution, those are our policies, but we also have some unwritten rules, and this is how we treat each other. And instead of you're going to have a misstep and then I'm just going to talk badly behind you about your back, I'm going to tell you like, hey, you did this and you use this word and that makes people uncomfortable, or hey, that's not how we really do things here. It is having that clarity and telling people you are so welcome and I am so happy that you're here. I think that's a big difference that I can really identify is a hallmark of being raised in a religious community. The other thing is I was raised like I wasn't joking when I said, my dad going to the union hall once a month was the only time that I had a window into secular society. Like I went to private schools until I was in 6th grade. I didn't listen to any secular music until I was probably in junior high. The idea that I even call things secular is probably very odd to a lot of people. But I hadn't heard a curse word until I was like 13. And so understanding that a lot of people live in isolation to no fault of their own. And then realizing when people are starting to come out and they're starting to talk and they want to become part of that community, how can you make that as easy for those people as possible? Because it's really challenging when people are doing something for the first time. It would be so easy for people to run back and say, this is an unwelcome environment. I tried to go to a union meeting and people were yelling at each other and I don't like that, so I'm never going to go back. It's so much better that somebody's walking into the union meeting for the first time and say, I'm really happy you're here. I'm really excited that you want to be engaged. Do you have any questions? Let me tell you how things operate. And then being open with, I'm a resource to you. If you think of something down the road, just let me know. And I'm more than happy to be your person to answer those questions. And if I can't answer them, then I'm going to find the information for you. And so growing up in the church is really complicated. And there are lots of bad things about that. But I am very thankful that it has informed my organizing style in a way that I have this bottomless well of compassion and kindness that I show to other people. Or at least I hope that I do. Maybe I'm meaner than I think I am.
Well, yeah, the religion thing is always, it's a thorny thing. Because, of course, religion has been put to many, bad uses throughout history. And I think a lot of leftist or progressive people have ambivalence or hostility toward it because of that. But, at the same time, as a, agnostic, atheistic Marxist myself, I'm I think our values do kind of come from the gospel originally, though. The first shall be last and the last shall be first kind of thing. And the story of Jesus is about a guy who, a working class guy who gets the regular folk riled up about, the corruption and inequality in his society. And so the rich folks call the cops on him and have him killed. That's what that story is about. Yes. And I think that is potentially an in for us to reach some people. Eugene Debs has this amazing essay about what Jesus was really about. And it's he was an old-timey American labor organizer and socialist. And it's one of the most moving things I've ever read. It's incredible.
It is. So yeah, I just want to speak to that and then we can move on to the next thing. So there's a thing in Christianity called being a red letter Christian, because Bibles traditionally, they're all in black and white unless there is something that Jesus is credited with saying, and those are always in red letters. Mm-hmm. And so to see that the actual messaging is so progressive, the idea that a rich man has more chance of getting into heaven than a camel has going through an eye of a needle, that he's flipping money table. It's just, Jesus is so dope. It's such a, that's so ridiculous to say, but as a concept and a person and the messaging, it's so solid because it is, we take care of each other all the time. That is always the right thing to do, is to care and love people. And that doesn't have qualifiers to it. It is just, you love people. And so it's just, I really do try to put that out, that even people that I don't agree with, everybody is deserving of love and compassion. And while I choose to not spend a lot of time with some people, I don't hate people, right? I acknowledge that people are on their journey and they act in a way that makes sense to them. And, maybe I'm not going to have them in their life, but in my life, but I appreciate that we are still connected to each other because we're human. And that's how our brains are wired, is that it's to seek that connection with each other. And so to create environments where people can step outside of the ideology that we all can carry as a suppressive weight. And we just say you're a person, I'm a person. We can just talk to each other. I think that is something that we can definitely do in organizing spaces, because that's the right thing to do, is to care and love for each other. And it's, people, that's it feels like a forbidden thing to talk about, is unconditional love. But man, we all live really hard lives. And so why is it bad to say, I really think that my role here is to make other people's lives easier and to make sure that they know how much I love and appreciate them. People need to know that.
But that would be communism.
Oh, it's not communism.
I'm just being
I don't remember that chapter of Marx being you should.
I'm sorry. I'm just making fun of the people who call anything anything kinder than like hunting human beings for sport is communism.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, on the religion thing though, I mean, so do you think your background kind of
Mhm.
gives you like maybe an edge to be able to sort of communicate to like people who sort of have this cultural identification as like conservative, but at the same time also have like a basic understanding of their class interest? Because like I've encountered folks like that, and it,
Mhm.
it seems like you can sometimes bring them over with economic policy. Like there, like when I worked at Fred Meyer, there was this
Yes.
guy. He was a great guy. I loved working with him. But he wore like American flag swag like every single day, and he, had
Hmm.
talked about how like conservative he was. But like one night we were like, there was the customer service desk, and it got quiet, and we were like hanging out up there, and somehow politics came up, and he's like, "Well, I'm pretty conservative, and we probably won't agree about much." And like 10 minutes later, he's like agreeing with me that like yeah, healthcare should be a right. Like we need to get billionaires'
Right.
money out of politics. Racism is a tool the
Hmm.
rich use to divide the poor. And I'm like, and I had to bite my tongue from being like, "Welcome to the party, comrade. It seems like you've."
Right. Well, yeah, because you can't say things like that because those, like you said, like those cultural identifiers, they run so deep. I will say, so that is kind of my like secret superpower is that being raised Christian nationalists, I can talk to other Christian nationalists. I understand. I've talked to my parents enough, and I have attempted to be as compassionate as possible to when I'm hearing about the way that they chose to raise me and my siblings, and to hear their perspective and then see the same kind of environment that people inhabit. Like, I do understand why people want to shelter their children. I do understand why people want to really hunker down. Um, but also the power of sitting with people and saying, what do you think? Like, take away all the labels, take away all the stuff. Like you just said, right? Like, do you think people should be able to live in a house, or do you think people should be able to access, a doctor or health care? It's my dad and I are very, 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 very different. And I would say as on opposite sides of the political spectrum as possible. And yet we agreed on so many things because we took all of those labels out. And it was just, this is the right thing to do. And so it's, I do think it's such an asset to have this kind of background that other people don't of being raised Christian nationalists and then stepping away from it and then getting, really leftist and understanding that, if you go far enough in either direction, you kind of meet on the opposite side. And I think that's just so beautiful, but you really have to do that hard work of saying, okay, I'm not going to tell you what my label is. You're not going to tell me what yours is. We're just going to start talking and not just start talking. And this is something that I think is really different is I want to listen to what you have to say. I'm not going to, like, I'm real chatty and I'm an interrupter. And so going through learning how to do that and make a good listener. And people are just so fascinating. And that I just want to hear, why do you think this? Tell me more, and getting really curious and then realizing like, all right, when we really unpack this, man, we are so much more alike than we ever thought was possible. And so that experience you had with your person is just, that's beautiful. It's wonderful when we talk to each other and we realize we do have so much more in common. So actually one of the things that the AFL-CIO has is a program called Labor in the Pulpit. And it's where union organizers go to a church or a synagogue or a mosque around Labor Day, and they give some kind of message about economic justice or, unionism, because these are community centers. These are gathering places. And it is important that we don't eliminate whole populations of people because our conceptions about who they are. It's much better to go into an environment and say, this is what I think. And if you're interested in these things, thank you for letting me come here. If you want to hear more, I'm going to stick around today and we can talk as long as you want, or this is how to find me. Because and I think that that's just a huge reason that I organize and I'm running the campaign, is realizing people need a way to find each other, because that's we're also isolated, coming out of the pandemic, and just when you are living through late stage capitalism, it's so easy just to kind of wall yourself off and become really isolated and think I'm the only person that thinks this. But if we're creating opportunities for people to connect with each other, then that's better for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, we also kind of like the thing about winning over conservatives. I mean, I feel like we also have kind of a mirror problem in trying to get like sort of rank and file, I want to say, or sort of street level, unquote, like liberals who are dissatisfied with the status quo to sort of embrace more
Mm-hmm.
radical positions. But like that almost seems like harder in some ways. I mean, do you have any thoughts or experience with that? I went through
I would
that conversion
absolutely agree with
myself,
that.
but like anyway.
It's purity politics in leftist circles is so real that if you don't agree with 100% of what I'm saying, then you're my enemy, because nuance doesn't exist. And like variations of thought, like I am right and you are wrong. It becomes this very, and leftists, or a lot of them, they're really smart and they're really well read. And so it's, well, I read this book and this is what I think. And so that's right. It's like, well, you're reading that book through the lens of your lived experience. And so that's different than mine. And so I'm going to think this other thing. And so it is really difficult to create that environment, specifically within leftist circles, that like, it's okay if we don't agree. And so you'll see that in lots of different ways. Like firearms is a good example. Like I'm a firearms person. I think that firearms are a tool for a number of different things, and people should have access to them. That's very unpopular for a lot of people that imagine a world where firearms don't exist. And I'm like, well, we might not agree about this one thing, and that's fine, but we also don't need to argue about it until both of us hate each other. We can just accept, like, okay, I don't think that thing, and like, all right, you're not going to come out to the range with me. That's fine, and I'm going to do my thing, and you're going to do yours. So yeah, creating this environment of it's okay if we disagree. I think the leftist movement would benefit greatly from that, instead of the if you're not 100% with me, then you're against me, which feels very real a lot of times.
Yes, go back and listen to Corey and my earlier episode about ultra leftism, folks, where we talk about exactly this. But I was
Yeah.
gonna say though, there's your edge over Megan right there. Like you can take the go with the conservative guys out to the pit and shoot guns while you talk about stuff. Megan doesn't seem like she would do
That's true.
that, does she?
I can't
Maybe I'm
speak to her
wrong.
proficiency with a firearm.
She just doesn't seem like the type. But again, I could be making a snap judgment there. Um, so big digression now. So you recently
Okay.
graduated from the Masters of Public Administration at the Evergreen State College. Myself and Corey, the other usual host of this program, also did that program a few years back. Um, as did, amusingly, in the same cohort as us, Danny Madrone, who has become one of the fiercest opponents of the Workers' Bill of Rights on the Olympia City Council. Can you talk about how that experience kind of influenced your thinking or perspective on any like policy issues you're looking at in Tumwater, or just sort of labor left strategy in general?
Sure. Um, I was really excited to go back to school. I've always wanted to go to grad school, and my life has been, let's say, complicated, and so it wasn't really possible until recently. Um, and so what was really great going back as an older student was I did have, career experience. I knew what I wanted to learn. I knew what I was good at and what was going to be really challenging. And so I really jumped into it with both feet to try to, my goal was to how to take the ideas of, I know that this is right, or this is what I want to do. And like, okay, well, what is it like to write a policy that says that this thing is actually going to happen? How to be cognizant of the unintended consequences of the thing that you want to do, right? Like if you're creating social housing, how is that going to impact, other things? And so it's being aware of the larger sphere. I was really thankful to get that window into just my life experience is really, really narrow, and I know that. And so going to school is a really good remedy for having a narrow kind of frame of reference. And so understanding how government operates, it's that continued desire to understand, what are the rules I don't understand these rules. I'm in this community, I'm in this society. I don't understand how this operates. I don't know, because all of these rules aren't written down, right? Nobody told me that if you actually want to get something done, you need to be part of the Rotary or whatever. So it that's the thing from MPA that I really appreciate was, how do you understand and then convey to others how government actually operates? And then one of the things that I'm really thankful for was I ended up writing my last quarter. I ended up doing 12 credits because life is crazy sometimes. And so I did my 6 credit capstone on I'm the president of an organization called Cascadia now. So my capstone was creating a strategic plan and just kind of the history of the organization. But I also did a 6 credit contract on the epidemic of social isolation and how that shows up in the workplace, and if unionism can help mitigate the negative effects of that. And so when I was doing that paper, I really fell down the rabbit hole of civic engagement and the role of local government in creating those connections to each other, and how important it is, or how vital it could be, if local government actually looked at the constituents that inhabit that municipality and actually said, okay, how can I bring people together? And realizing it's things like onboarding. And onboarding is just, rules that we operate by. And so you do that in organizing all the time. And it would be really great if they did that more in local government, that like, this is how things operate. You should understand this. So it really made me understand why I always thought transparency was important. And then showed, this is how you actually develop a communication structure that actually engages with people instead of becoming that authoritarian voice. How do you foster collaboration within an organization? That was, I think, because it was my last quarter, that was very much on my mind when I think about, these were all the things that I learned. I was really, that 6 credit contract was really great. But the vast majority of my electives were in financial management. There is no clear indication of the priorities of a government or an organization or an individual, then how their money gets spent. And so really understanding the importance of budget creation and how, you hear the word depreciation, but what does that mean? And then being able to, calculate that and really understand how everything works, and why does that fire truck need to get replaced every 5 years, and all of that. So that was the vast majority of the electives that I took, was to really learn municipal and local government financial management. And that was, so fascinating. Like, before I was the president of the Labor Council, I was the treasurer. And it's such a thankless job, and also one of the most necessary, because if you're not watching your money, what are you doing? You're just kind of, So it's that I'm very thankful that I had the privilege to go to school. It was really difficult. I had gone, like I said, I'm the single mom of 2 daughters, and I don't have a ton of help. So my youngest ended up coming to class with me quite a few times. So it's, how do you manage all of the things? It was a really good opportunity for me to realize, like, my capacity is actually really large. I am able to do this and this and this and this, and I'm happy, I'm good. And I genuinely really like to learn, and I like to do things. And I really love helping other people meet their goals. And so what is it like to learn about the projects that my cohort, people are working on, and how can I help you meet that goal? Or I love school so much. But I had to promise my daughter that I wouldn't keep going, because I am obsessed with the idea of getting my doctorate and then making everybody call me Doc Martin. Abby was not a fan. So I promised that I would not go and get my doctorate until 2030 at the earliest.
Yeah, I've heard PhDs are just brutal. Anyway, the the thing about MPA, like, thinking back on it, it's a really it's a good reminder that, like, we need to be thinking not just about, like, how we win power. Obviously, like, we need to be thinking about that, like how we organize, how we win, power in government, but also like really think through what we're gonna do when we're there, right?
Yeah.
And that was part of it. Like, I honestly, I mean, I found that program like incredibly useful and informative. I'm very glad that I went through it. But it was radicalizing in a way too, in terms of some of like what wasn't said about like why are we
Mm-hmm.
in this situation where we're always talking about needing to squeeze more
Mm-hmm.
efficiency out of less and less resources to like provide services to people. Like this was the same time that I was working in nonprofits, like being like, we're trying to solve a huge social problem that's like a structural
Mm-hmm.
policy failure with like tiny resources. Like we need big democratically driven like state economic intervention to like fix this
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But it's it's a good reminder that like for in the near term, a lot of our strategy is we're going to be as much as technocracy gets a bad name maybe on the left. A lot of what we're going to be doing is sort of administering sort of technocratic, social democratic policies, and the question is like, how do we make that serve a political vision rather than just being a
Mm-hmm.
substitute for it, the way that I think liberalism has often tended to do. Like, how can we craft public policies that not only improve working people's quality of life but also like improve their share of the power in society, right? I've thought about things like, how do you like, can we do policies where like there's incentives for businesses to just not fight unionization, right? Like if
Right.
you
Right.
just like pledge to do card check, then you'll get preferential treatment on contracts, or like
Mm-hmm.
weird things like that, as a way of like growing jobs while at the same time like also growing our own power, things like that. I think these are the sort of things that need thought. I remember when like Zev Cook, who's a DSA member running for city council in Tacoma, came to talk to our chapter. um, Zev talked about like trying to use policy as like a wedge between small business and big business to get some progressive elements of small business on our side by being like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like um shifting the tax burden more toward like big chains and stuff like that, or trying to get commercial rents to be like less exorbitant. um
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just weird things like that. But anyway, I think the whole theoretical rabbit hole about like how we govern could like go on forever, so like maybe I should like avoid that or save it for like another time. But I think it is a topic that we um as a movement, like we do actually need to seriously talk about more, is like, okay, how do we
Yeah.
get into power, but also like how do we govern once we're there in a really sort of like consistent,
Right.
thought out way that like really
Well, and I think
grows
a lot
working
of
power, working people's power.
I think a lot of that is, how do you build a coalition? How do you build a cohort? How do you um, understand what everybody's roles are within that? And a big part for me is just to try to create a sense of entitlement, that for leftists and people that are progressive, like, we're entitled to these spaces. We don't need to feel resigned that the only people that are electable are the ones that are, with the hospitality association or whatever, that there are more of us than there are of them, and we don't need to be afraid. And the power of people working together I really want to believe that it will always trump um, the power of a dollar. But people have to vote. People have to actually do things. When you were talking, I started laughing because so Karen Kaiser is a Washington state senator, and she got introduced to me by a lady that I work with at the Labor History Museum, and she wrote a book called "Getting Elected is the Easy Part," and it's about like, yes, because some people are just natural candidates, and they do a great job, but then, okay, now you have office. What do you actually do? And so trying to convey what is policy writing and how do you do all of that work to make sure that when things are passed, they're actually reasonable. Because what we have now there are policies that are really progressive, but they're not enforced. Like, if it is a public works, or if it's a building that is being paid for by tax dollars, there's supposed to be I think it's like a 40% apprenticeship utilization that's supposed to happen. And that very rarely happens. If it did, it would be incredible. But there's no enforcement. And so what is it? And that's something that leftists really don't like to talk about is what is it like to enforce a rule? Because then you're the bad guy, then you're the authority figure. And like it's easier to shout and to write policies, but like, okay, now what? Somebody has to tell that person, well, you don't get to do that anymore. And it's trying to convey, there's a role for everybody in the movement, and some people are good policy writers, but we need enforcers too. We need people to say, no, you cannot build that building because you do not have enough apprentices to actually put that up the way that you're supposed to. And it's conveying, the importance of like project labor agreements and prevailing wage and all of that, and making it so normal that unions are really the only way to get things done, and that anything else is really unacceptable, and that we really do set the tone, and that needs to be enforced economically.
Yeah, power is not inherently bad is like a thing.
Right.
Some people, I think, have difficulty with that, but like it's all about
it's
who's
just the
using
same thing,
it
like
and for
money
what.
isn't inherently bad, right? These are tools. Firearms aren't inherently bad. These are tools. And so it's really acknowledging like it's the person that holds the money or the power or the fire. They determine whether they're going to deliver harm or they're going to be helpful. And so it's, again, stepping out of that absolutism that is so tempting in the leftist movement to say everybody in power is bad, instead of like, well, that person might be corrupt and we should replace them. But just because somebody gets elected doesn't mean they're a sellout or they're looking for ways to enrich themselves, or they are inherently bad because they were able to convince a bunch of voters to vote for them. So there is this, it's such an easy way to dismiss people and just to say, well, everybody that does that is bad. If they occupy a Senate seat, then they have to be a bad person. Well, yeah, of course you're not going to want to run for anything if you are painting with such a broad brush that all of those people are bad. Or yeah, you're not going to want to interact with them. You're not going to want to run for office because then you would be the bad person. And so it's, stepping into that, like, hey gang, there's a lot of shades of gray. There aren't these absolutes. Like, I was going to do a whole Star Wars analogy that I will save everybody from, but it is good to understand that people can be good and people can be bad. And one thing doesn't make somebody good or bad. It's how they interact with the world. And you need to have a level of humility to see how people interact and then express their actions instead of what they just say all the time.
Well, I think, thankfully, it seems like the sort of, I just lost the word that I was looking for, but like that sort of essentialism is starting to like diminish in favor of like a more pragmatic approach lately, which is refreshing to see. But on that note, as we sort of go into the conclusion here, what is it that you're going to most need from working class organizations like labor unions, like DSA, worker-owned cooperatives, and so on, both to get elected to this office and to govern effectively once you are? This is your chance to make the ask to people, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, the ask. So I need people, right? I really thrive on collaboration. There's a reason that I didn't get a campaign manager. I don't deal well with being told things. I sound like a petulant teenager, so apologies, but I do really well I like working with people. And so I want to hear what's going on and how can I be of service to them. And then to try to figure out, okay, well, if we are in this together and it does make sense for me to get this office, like, okay, this is what a partnership would look like. This is what a collaboration would look like. So I think just people. And so it would be, volunteers to door knock. That would be really great. If you can't do that, then donating money so I can hire door knockers or, pay my lovely social media manager and to post things. And so it's to do that messaging and like megaphone. I think that would be the most important thing. And then while in office, it's so often that politicians are like, well, you got me here and now I'm going to do my own thing. And I want to create that community of accessibility. It's easy to wall yourself off, but I think what I really enjoy is people know how to find me, right? Like I'm always at Solidarity Night. I'm always going to be at the Labor Council meeting. You know, these are the places that I return every email. And so creating that environment of, I now hold a position of power and I am dedicated to following through on my commitments of collectivism. And so tell me what's going on. And I'm going to be really honest with you about what I can and can't do and what makes sense moving ahead. And then we're going to have a conversation about it. So the answer for me for almost everything is like people and working together, because that's what I like the most.
But also money.
Right? Like money is a thing. And it's so crazy that that's how people gauge, like if you're having a successful campaign is, did you get more money than your competitor? And I'm like, well, I'm not talking to the Hospitality Association. I'm not trying to schmooze Democrats, right? Like I told the Democrats I didn't want to deal with them. I definitely don't want to deal with Republicans. And so, you know, I'm cutting myself off from these massive pipelines of money. Does that mean that I'm not running a successful campaign? Or does that mean that I'm being a person that's actually living my values and ideals? And so that's what I mean about gauging success. Like, I'm not an unsuccessful candidate because I don't have more money than my opponent. I am really proud of the money that I have raised because every dollar has come from somebody that really believes in me. And I really appreciate that. And it's hard. There's a reason I don't get paid for the Labor Council stuff or any of the union stuff. Like asking people for money just makes me sick. I just hate it.
It's one of those like unfortunate, awkward things that you have to do when you run. I mean, and the
Yes.
money is important to run a campaign, but like, yes, like people power is the thing that wins these, especially when you're going up against, you know, people who are obviously better funded than you. And on that note, you have a campaign kickoff event coming up Friday, August 29th. Tell us about that.
I do. So it's the Friday night of Labor Day weekend. And it's going to be at Tumwater Historical Park from 5 to 8. It was really important for me to have it at a park because parks are awesome. And I wanted to have it at a park that had a really great playground because people have kids. And Tumwater Historical Park is just beautiful. I've gone there so many times with my daughter. She has ridden that zip line more times than I can think. And I wanted to have an event where alcohol is not being served. I think having alcohol embedded in politics and union organizing just kind of everywhere, I think that's to everybody's detriment. So I wanted it to be like a really wholesome event, you know, so kick off your Labor Day with a labor-friendly candidate and think about what the world would be like. What would Tumwater be like if there was a progressive voice on the city council? And so the event, like it'll be, all of us at the park shelter there, and we're going to have dinner for everybody and just come and hang out. But yeah, not a cocktail party, not at the country club, not, you know, I am sure, it's going to be a really nice night. And so I hope people can come out for it. It'll be really great.
You going to give a big speech or anything?
Oh, you know that I can't turn down a speech. I love a speech. I would say like it's so funny because I thought that I would be a good politician because I love giving speeches and doing paperwork. And then that turned out to not be what a candidate does at all. So, yes, I would love to give a speech. Give a good one, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So any closing thoughts before we go?
Okay, so no, if we're talking about events on the 31st from 11 to 1, so this would be the Sunday before Labor Day, we're doing a public sector worker Rise Up rally at the Capitol because public sector workers our work is diminished and trivialized because people don't understand it. And so when we get laid off, people don't care because we don't talk about our work often enough. And so, like I said, my job is through the CDC. I only found out about 3 weeks ago that I wasn't going to get laid off. But then I talked to my project officer and she's like, yeah, I can't meet with you because we can't go back into the building because there was just this shooting that happened. And so, on August 31st from 11 to 1, we are going to meet and wave some signs and talk about how do we protect public sector workers? And also, the right way to do that is by reforming our totally upside down and horrific tax code. And then on September 1st, we always do Labor Day, and us is the Labor Council. We always do Labor Day down in Chehalis. So come down at 8 in the morning and make some pancakes. And then we'll be there till 3 hanging out. And so what I am so thankful for this campaign, it's given me a conduit to connect with so many people and to get into so many rooms that I never would have had access to before. So for me, that has been extraordinarily successful. And I'm so excited about the prospect of winning this race and what it would be like to actually inhabit a seat on the Tumwater City Council and push really progressive policies to a group that is probably going to be really unfriendly, and how much I need people's support while I'm doing that, because I do feel confident that it will be me against everybody else kind of every step of the way. And as much as I love a conflict and love talking things through, I am sure that there will be some very difficult times, and it would be wonderful if I had some people to lean on. So yeah, I need help. So show up, and I'd love to get to know anybody that wants to get to know me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. We will put the link to your campaign website and like donation link in the show notes. Yeah, I meant for this to be maybe like an hour and a half long show, but it's more like 2 hours. But we were having a lot of great conversation about various things. So yeah, no, it's fine. It's all good. Thank you so much for being here, and yeah, for folks listening, I really hope you all will go out, volunteer, and or donate for Rachelle. And until next time, solidarity forever.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too.